As recent as a couple of weeks ago, both Nebraska and Wisconsin didn't think that they'd be staring 5-5 in the face, which is why this game this weekend is a must-win for both the Huskers and the Badgers.
From LA to Piscataway, all Big Ten all year long. This is Big Ten 10.
Tomorrow is never guaranteed, and neither is next week for the Nebraska Cornhuskers and the Wisconsin Badgers, which is another reason why this game is so important and another reason why this game will be, one, so close, and two, probably so competitive. Because if you look forward to Thanksgiving Saturday, rivalry Saturday throughout college football, Nebraska hosts Iowa. But the Hawkeyes right now are probably playing their best football, ranked 16th in the latest college football playoff rankings. That is far from a guaranteed victory back-to-back in this series for the Nebraska Cornhuskers. You look at Wisconsin, they play at Minnesota on rivalry Saturday. Minnesota will probably lose to Ohio State. They're going to be sitting there at 5-6, and they're going to have the axe on the line. Can Minnesota keep one of the greatest rivalry trophies in all of college football? And they're going to be fighting for bowl eligibility against their arch rival. They're going to be very motivated. And although Minnesota has been a roller coaster throughout this season, that's a team that on their best days can play a good to a solid football game. So rivalry Saturday, even though these teams sit at 5 wins apiece, rivalry Saturday is far from guaranteed. So they need to clinch things up. One of these teams is going to clinch up bowl eligibility this weekend. So why is that so important? When you have these two programs, Luke Fickell at Wisconsin, Matt Rhule at Nebraska, both have said before this season they are developmental programs, they are developmental head coaches. Getting to a bowl game, getting those extra bowl practices, and now in the world of opt-outs, you get a lot of those young players more reps in those bowl practices than you originally did before the age of opt-outs. Those bowl practices and preparations are so important in developing those younger players, in developing your program. And when you look at these first-year head coaches and considering the seasons that they've had, they need to get to a bowl game to really take that next step as a program. This game is huge on so many levels to get to the postseason for both the Nebraska Cornhuskers and the Wisconsin Badgers. All right, let's dive into both of these teams. Both Nebraska and Wisconsin. This is not where they'd imagine, right? You look at a couple of weeks ago, both teams were sitting at 5-3. Nebraska had a lowly Michigan State on the schedule and a winnable Maryland game on the schedule, and they found ways to lose both of them. You look at the Wisconsin Badgers, Indiana and Northwestern. 2 games, 2 teams that they're probably more talented than, but they didn't have the heart to come up with the W in both of those, and that's where we sit. We sit at 5-5 the last 2 weeks. The Badgers and the Huskers probably should at least won one of those games apiece, but both teams fell on the short end of the stick the last 2 weeks. These teams, they're so comparable in so many ways, but these teams have both been decimated by injury. You look at Nebraska, starting offensive linemen Turner Corcoran and Ethan Piper out for the season. Early in the year, it was skill players on the perimeter, Marcus Washington and Isaiah Garcia-Castaneda. And also early in the season, you look at the season-ending injuries to Gabe Ervin Jr. and Ramir Johnson in the backfield. Credit to Matt Rhule. He's found players to step up into these roles. Next man up always. Who's going to rise to the occasion? Matt Rhule has found players, and he's leaned on that great Tony White defense to be able to get to this point. Wisconsin has had their fair share of injuries to some really key impact players on offense as well. Tanner Mordecai was injured. Braden Locke was in there for a while. Now Tanner's back. You look at Ches Malusi, right? He was Phil Longo called him maybe their most explosive player on offense. Early in the season, he was out for the year. Braylon Allen got hurt in the Ohio State game. He was out for Indiana. They lose. He was out. He only had 3 carries for 3 yards the first 2 drives against Northwestern. Really wasn't able to give it a full go. He was out against Northwestern. They end up on the losing end of that one as well. Chemre Dike has been banged up and in and out of the lineup as well. These are two teams that I think are at where they're at for many different reasons, but I think one big reason is because of injuries. They're kind of a shell of what they expected to be, especially early in the season. When you break this one down, it's going to be a close game. It's probably going to be a low-scoring game. At least that's what probably Nebraska fans want. That's kind of where I want to start off with previewing and breaking down this specific matchup. The big question is for the Nebraska Cornhuskers, can they hold on to the damn ball? This is a team that leads FBS in turnovers. They've been bitten by the injury bug, and they have been bitten, and boy, is it swelling up for the turnover bug. They cannot hold on to the football. And when you are decimated via the injury, and when you can't hold on to the ball, and you are limited at the quarterback position, how do you win games? How on earth do you win games? How on earth has Nebraska been able to win 5 games? That maybe says something to what Matt Rhule is doing. Losing the turnover battle week after week after week, yet still finding ways to be in a lot of these football games. Whether win or lose, they are in them to the very end right now for Nebraska. But they need to hold on to the football, and they need to establish a run game. They need to tell their offensive line, you are going to block downhill all night long in Madison. Although Nebraska, I mentioned, some of their starting offensive linemen on the shelf for the year, I believe this is a Nebraska offensive line that can impose their will at the line of scrimmage and go right at the Wisconsin Badgers. This is a Nebraska offense that is tops in the Big Ten in rushing yards per game. This is a Wisconsin defense that is 9th in the Big Ten against the run this season. Nebraska line up at the line of scrimmage and run it right at them. You're going to get into some third and mediums. You're going to get into some third and longs. Take advantage of your special teams. Try to pin Wisconsin deep. Punting is winning. I know Nebraska, you're not a big fan of the black and gold, but there's something to be said about special teams and flipping the field. Nebraska, you're not going to go down and score every time. Your offense is not that good. You need to steer into the special teams a little bit to make things more difficult for Wisconsin to move the football up and down the field. Now, when I look at both of these teams, they both switched to 3-3-5 defensive schemes in the offseason. One of them has adapted extremely well, Nebraska. Tony White is one of the final 20 coaches out there for the Frank Broyles Award, the top assistant coach in all of college football. And on the other side, in Mike Tressel, now you've got Hunter Wohler and other players questioning effort, questioning if guys really want to be there. You've got 2 teams that have switched to 3-3-5 defenses, but it's kind of gone in opposite directions right now. And I want to focus on Wisconsin. Because if that effort isn't there, and if leaders like Hunter Wohler are questioning players around the rest of the defense, that's not good. And Nebraska's got to take advantage of that by going right at this Wisconsin defense. I know Hunter Wohler is going to say what he's supposed to say it's not the coaches, we're not doing what they're telling us to do. But I think it's got to go a little bit on coaching. You got to have, when it comes down to effort, defense is all about effort. Offense, you look at scheming things up, get speed, agility, all that sort of stuff, all the skills that go in to offense. But when you talk about defense, it's about effort. It's about shedding blocks. It's about getting to the next level, working to the running back, all that sort of things. Effort is so big on the defensive side of the ball. And when Wisconsin doesn't have that, and you've gotten to the middle of November, when you get to the 11th game of the season, we're almost eating turkey. It's almost Thanksgiving. And you're questioning effort right now. That is a big concern, I think, for the Wisconsin Badgers. It should be interesting to see if Nebraska can really take advantage of that. As long as we're talking about Wisconsin on the defensive side of the ball. And we talked about Nebraska and how much they've turned the football over this season. Wisconsin, you might give up a couple more yards, but you got to look to strip the ball. You got to look to jump a route. Look to force the turnover. Okay, you might give up. You're trying to strip the ball instead of tackling him at the legs. You might give up a couple more yards. You might jump a route. You might give up a bigger play. But eventually, with how this season has gone down for the Nebraska Cornhuskers, eventually Wisconsin is going to capitalize, give their offense a short field, and get the ball into the end zone. That is such a big deal in this game. When I look at Wisconsin on the offensive side of the football, this is a Badger offense that needs to throw the ball. Unless Braylon Allen can go, right? Braylon Allen, even coming into this week, was at the top of the Wisconsin depth chart, but who knows what's going to happen. But if you're rolling out Jackson Aker and Cade Yakamele in your run game, it's going to have to be a lot of Tanner Mordecai throwing the football. The health of Chemre Dike is also going to be important. What are we going to see? Bryson Green had a decent game against Indiana. You look at Will Pauling, has had a really good season transferring from Cincinnati. Someone's going to have to step up. And I think they're going to have to make plays down the field, chunk plays down the field against the Nebraska defense. Now, the Huskers are 10th in the Big Ten against the pass. But if I'm Nebraska, I'm looking at that Northwestern tape and I am trying to replicate that. I am keeping everything in front of me. That's where Northwestern really succeeded. Wisconsin didn't get a bunch of big plays down the field. Northwestern knew that the Badgers didn't have a run game, and they needed to rely on the throw game. This was not a balanced offense. They didn't allow big plays down the field. They forced Wisconsin to continue to make plays in the passing game, and they could only make so many plays. Right? Tanner Mordecai, I thought, had a decent game, but these receivers, right, outside of Will Pauling, and then you have a injury-riddled Chemre Dike right now, these receivers right now, this is not as good as advertised. At the beginning of the season, even though Nebraska statistically in the Big Ten isn't outstanding against the pass, I think they can replicate what Northwestern did, trying to keep everything in front of them and not allowing Wisconsin to make the big play. I think that is huge. That is huge right now. Force Tanner to maybe beat you, because look, Tanner's been fine this season, right? He has not been as good as advertised like the wide receivers. Can he beat Nebraska? That is a big question going forward throughout this game. But following that game plan, like they did against Northwestern, will be huge in this one. Obviously, it's going to come down to the turnovers. That has told the story of Nebraska football games so far this season. It is going to be close. It's probably going to be low scoring. It's going to come down to who makes the play in the end. And this is going to be, to some people, this is going to appear to be an ugly football game, right? Some of these Big Ten Saturday night games have been blowouts. I think this one is going to be closer. I think this one is going to be a competitive ball game, especially with what is on the line. Both teams trying to lock up bowl eligibility. I want to hear what you guys think of this matchup. Do you think Nebraska will continue being bitten by the turnover bug, or are they going to clean things up this week? What do you think about Wisconsin? Can Tanner Mordecai throw the ball enough to move the ball down the field to get a win and get Wisconsin to bowl eligibility? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. I'm Big Ten Ted. We'll see you in the next one.
Thanks for watching Big Ten Ted, where it's all Big Ten all year long. Make sure to like the video to spread the word of Big Ten Ted to the masses, and subscribe to the channel for updates on Big Ten content that drops every day.